Sherman's march to the sea saw an army of thousands of Union soldiers pillaging their way from Atlanta to Savannah. Sherman called it foraging, but in reality it was the terrorizing of civilians, combined with the theft of all food and property that could be carried away, and destroying what was left. Homes were burned, animals were shot, and slaves were freed with no regard for what would then become of them. Slaves who refused to leave were many times forced at bayonet point to comply, with the women and children being forced to walk on foot, while the men became servants for Union soldiers. By the time that Sherman's troops neared Savannah, they had accumulated thousands of freed slaves. But Sherman and many of his officers had grown tired of the slaves following and being a part of the column of soldiers, to the point that a decision was made to cut them off entirely from the march. As the Union Army reached Ebenezer Creek, the slaves were told that there was a Confederate regiment ahead and they all needed to go to the back of the column for their safety. This, however, was not true. The officers actually knew that there was a small band of Confederate cavalry coming up behind the column. As the march reached the creek, a pontoon bridge was laid across the water in order for the army to pass. At this point, an order was given to the Union soldiers in the rear of the column to not allow one single slave to cross Ebenezer Creek. The Union Army then crossed over the water and the pontoon bridge began to be dismantled. When the thousands of slaves saw the bridge being taken up in front of them, they rushed forward, screaming, as most of them could not swim. Charles Kerr of the Illinois Cavalry wrote, "As soon as we were over the creek, orders were given to the engineers to take up the pontoons and not let a Negro cross. I sat upon my horse then and witnessed a scene, the like of which I pray my eyes may never see again." The Union soldiers pointed their rifles at the throng of slaves, threatening to shoot if they attempted to reach the quickly disappearing bridge, while at the same time, the Confederate cavalry came up the road behind them, the slaves trapped between the two groups of soldiers. A Union soldier wrote a letter home, describing the scene that unfolded before him regarding the slaves, saying, "They hesitated briefly, impacted by a surge of pressure from the rear, then stampeded with a rush into the icy water, old and young alike, men and women and children, swimmers and non-swimmers, determined not to be left behind." The soldiers watched as hundreds of slaves drowned before their eyes. They were then ordered to leave the creek and return to the march. General Sherman, who did not allow black soldiers in his army, later said that he fully supported the abandonment of the slaves as they were slowing down the forward momentum of the column.